This is Orange Nation Overtime with Stephen Fonte and Paulie Sibilia.
Welcome into Orange Nation Overtime, everyone, alongside Paulie Sibilia. I'm Stephen Fonte, and the losing streak is over. 4 straight losses for the Orange. If they had gotten to 5, it would have been their first 5-game losing streak since 1968-69. They avoid that. And
Not 67?
No, it was 68, 69.
Yeah.
But they avoid that with what was their best 40 minutes of basketball in quite some time.
Yeah, and I know it wasn't against Notre Dame, and that's everybody's excuse. But we've also learned that if you don't play your best, you're going to lose games against BC,
right?
Or Hofstra. They played good. They won by 14 against a team they're better than.
They did. And, Adrian Autry made the strategic move to insert Sadiq White into the starting lineup, said they needed to shake something up. Donnie Freeman on board with it, and Sadiq White did provide some energy. I mean, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but we saw a team that got back to playing defense the way that they were playing it towards the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and you got to do something. And Coach praised Sadiq White for his defensive effort. Donnie Freeman, I think, is the one guy on the team that can handle coming off the bench. It worked out. And I don't know if we'll see Sadiq tonight or not start, but I wouldn't be surprised.
You bring up tonight. It is a road game at North Carolina, a place that Syracuse has not had any success. Winless inside the Smith Center, 0-7 all time. The Tar Heels 12-0 at home this year with an average margin of victory of 22.3 points. Now, some of that is, they played non-conference opponents early on in the season that they destroyed, but the point remains that they are very difficult to beat at home, and they've been very good inside that building, and Syracuse goes there tonight absolutely needing a win against a team that puts up a lot of points.
Yeah, and we saw Syracuse run with Florida State. You're going to have to do that, but you're also going to have to mix in that defense. Like, you're going to have to hold UNC below their average, which is a lot.
Right. Yeah, they're scoring over 80 points per game, and I do believe that we will see some zone tonight, but you got to be able to rebound out of the zone, and that has been an issue for this team, that if you do get the missed shot, you got to be able to end the possession there.
You know what they got to do, too, is they can't turn the ball over, and they got to do everything, right? You can't just do one thing one game and another. Like, you got to go out, you got to rebound, you got to not turn the ball over, you got to play defense. And
got to score tonight.
Yes, yeah. And I think if you can somehow keep UNC in the 70s, it's a winnable game.
All right. We have Mike Waters on our show today to preview the game. Mike happens to be a UNC alum. We started him off by asking him about Donnie Freeman and the decision Adrian Autry made to shake up the starting lineup. We asked if there was potentially anything else behind that move, or if it was just strictly shake up the lineup and give a different look to Notre Dame. Here's what Mike Waters had to say.
I think for one thing, I think they were rewarding Sadiq White. Go back to the NC State game earlier in the week, and who was the player that Adrian Autry said was the only one out there trying? And, of course, he tried to walk that back pretty quick, but he said it.
Yeah.
So if you're looking to do something, and let's face it, something needed to be done. They had lost 4 in a row. I actually walked into the Dome on Saturday thinking we were going to see a different starting lineup. I thought Nathan George was going to be on the bench to start the game. I thought they were going to go with JJ and Nate Kings in the backcourt and put either, Cayenne or Tyler Betsy, or maybe Sadiq. Sadiq could have started at the 3, but I think because of Notre Dame's lineup and the matchups that you were going to have, maybe that didn't make as much sense. You reward Sadiq. You got to do something. You got to shock the team, send a message. And I think the message was, I'm going to play the guy that was really hustling all the way to the end of the NC State game. I'm going to play that guy. And also, that was the guy that was in the lineup when you were playing your best defensive basketball of the year back in November, December.
Mike, did it also just happen to be that he got 2 fouls, too, and that kind of cut his minutes in the first half? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when they did put him in, he didn't last very long because he picked up 2 quick fouls. And, one of them was one of those dumb offensive, illegal screens that, Syracuse has way too many of every game. So it's not like it was, a defensive foul or charging or something. He's had an illegal screen, got his second foul. And so, Adrian, for most of the year, has worked under the, if you get 2 fouls, I'm going to sit you down. If not for the rest of the half, at least for a little bit. We saw him do it a few games ago when Nathan George and J.J. Starling both had early fouls. Forget who that opponent was. Might have been Miami. So, that's the way he plays it. So you put him back, Sadiq has to go back out there. You sit Donnie down. I mean, Donnie played 15 second half minutes, and he had played 34 against NC State. So I don't think it's a thing where we're worried about like hiding or masking an injury situation. He's playing way too many minutes. He's averaging 30 minutes a game, and he played more than that at NC State and played great. And we didn't see any like hobbling off the court near the end of the game or anything like that. I think what we saw was, Sadiq White out there really hustling and, trying his best to stop Quadir Copeland in that game. And, that was a challenge. You're putting a power forward on a point guard.
That was the Virginia Tech game, by the way, that Bryce Zephyr played 11 minutes in the first half. And along those lines, we did see Bryce Zephyr at the very end of the game on Saturday against Notre Dame. We did not see Kyan Anthony in the second half. That was the other, lineup adjustment that we saw.
I think, again, Steve, that's a good point.
Yeah.
If the reason why you start Sadiq is you wanted to get back to playing the kind of defensive basketball you were playing in November, December, and Sadiq might have been that guy that can provide some energy and maybe set the tone at the start of the game, and you get your big guy, get Donnie Freeman on board with the idea, and you let him know, hey, listen, we're not exactly punishing you here. We're rewarding Sadiq, and we're trying to jazz up the team here. We're trying to, get a spark. Well, so if you are concerned about defense and defensive intensity and everything, Kyan Anthony's been struggling defensively. He's really, really had a hard time. And, he played his 9 minutes or so in the first half against Notre Dame and was still struggling. So, yeah, you got to win this game. So you got to go with the guys who are giving you exactly what you need, that defensive intensity. I mean, if Kyan is struggling defensively, you certainly don't want to send him out there on the floor to guard either Braden Shrewsbury or Jalen Harrelson, who are already both having great games against 2 of your better defenders, right?
Yeah, for sure. And, I did want to ask you before we move on to other things just about the lineups. Do you think it's going to continue tonight where we see Donnie come off the bench? Because as Paulie and I were talking about, Carolina scores, and they're going to have to keep up offensively with Carolina as much as anything else. Do you think that, Red goes with the defensive lineup to start, or do you think he puts his best offensive team on the floor to start this game tonight?
I'm torn. I'm not sure. Because it's national TV, big Monday, you're going to do it again. I mean, he handed it like nothing. It wasn't a permanent move on Saturday. So, do you really want to do a second game in a row without your, best player in the starting lineup? On the other hand, it worked. It worked against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is not North Carolina. However, might not be a terrible thing to have Sadiq White start the game on Caleb Wilson. One of my things is all the time is like referees tend to set the tone in the first few minutes of the game, and you might get a quick whistle, inside, maybe on a rebound or defense, and they want to set the hey, there's not going to be any reaching today. There's not going to be any pushing underneath. So, if there's going to be an early foul called on somebody jostling with Caleb Wilson for a rebound or trying to stop him, let it be Sadiq and not Donnie Freeman. And Donnie will still end up with his 30-plus minutes in this game, but maybe it is not a terrible idea to run Sadiq back out there just to start the game.
Do you think maybe it could be, you mentioned Sadiq could guard 1 through 5, and in just this case, it might be Donnie again, but, where we see him starting over anybody on the court, and it just, everybody, he's just out there as the defensive spark.
You could. I mean, he's got the athleticism and the agility to guard just about any position. I mean, I know Quadir isn't the normal size of a point guard. Quadir Copeland, he's 6'6", but they did put Sadiq White on him. They had him guarding a point, so they had Sadiq White out there at the top of the key trying to stop a guy who right now is probably an all-ACC first or second team point guard. So, he can guard anybody. If you move him to the 3, boy, that means you are taking your most consistent, your best shooter, Nate Kings, who's coming off a fantastic game against Notre Dame. You're taking him off the floor. And I don't know if you really want to go there because, as one of you guys mentioned earlier, North Carolina scores a ton of points, and you're going to need somebody like Nate Kings in order to keep pace with the Tar Heels.
Mike, I'll be honest with you. I was with you coming out of that NC State game when I heard Red say everything's on the table. I thought if there was an adjustment to the starting lineup, I thought it would be Nathan George. We've been hard on him. He's been hard on himself with the way he's played of late. He did play well against Notre Dame. 10 assists, no turnovers. That's obviously phenomenal. But even just his decision-making, didn't force it. He was better with his shot selection, went 2 for 6 from the floor, had a couple of steals, a bunch of rebounds. We've been critical of him, but I thought he played well. And if they get that kind of Nate George moving forward, then you got something, right? You're in business.
You do, and it was great to see Nate George have a good game. He's that kid. He needed one. He needed a good day because he has been struggling, and he really just kind of carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. You can tell when you talk to him after a couple of these recent games. It was weighing on him. Now, I'm not going to get too crazy over his game against Notre Dame. It was a good one, but the 10 assists, over half of those probably come on passes to a wing where a guy makes a three. I mean, there's nothing a point guard loves more than a bunch of shooters out there with him, because all you got to do is throw the ball to a shooter and you get an easy assist. That's great. Probably a little bit more impressive are the 0 turnovers. Now, Notre Dame isn't exactly the type of team that creates a lot of pressure. They don't really get after you. They're not the best defensive team in the league by any means. And the pace wasn't out of control either. So it was a day where you hopefully aren't going to have a lot of assists. But as far as Nate George and his recent play goes, it was fantastic to see him not have any. No silly ones. Yeah. No throwing the ball across the court where it gets picked off and goes the other way. He's really smart with the ball, and they're gonna need him to be smart with the ball tonight, and it's going to be hard to do because Carolina plays at such a fast pace. The tempo's up there. Defensively, do they really get after you? I mean, not like some of the other teams in the league, but the pace alone can get a point guard out of his comfort zone, can get him rushed. And so it's really going to be up to Nathan George to maintain control.
And the turnover thing hasn't just been a Nate George issue either. When you get 18, it's hard for one guy. They only had 6 this game. So they somehow got the whole team to take care of the ball.
Yeah, and can I point out that of those 6 turnovers, and 6 is a good low number, 3 of them are the offensive fouls on illegal screens. So they weren't even ball handling mistakes. They had 3 turnovers total that were ball handling mistakes.
Yeah, and that's not a live ball turnover, right? And so you look at Notre Dame's, Notre Dame had 5 points off turnovers. You can certainly live with that number. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case tonight against North Carolina. They like to get up and down the floor, although they don't force a lot of turnovers either. So we'll see. We'll see how this game shakes out tonight. When you look at this matchup, Mike, I know that you know this Carolina team pretty well. What stands out to you, I guess, from a personnel standpoint about this team tonight?
The 2 big guys up front, Caleb Wilson is playing, if it weren't for a guy named Cameron Boozer over at Duke, Caleb Wilson might be your ACC Rookie of the Year. He's just playing great, scoring more than I thought he would this season. In conference play, he's averaging 20, something like 20 and a half points a game, a little bit over that, and 8 rebounds. So he's really tough. And he's got a motor on him, and I'm kind of motor you don't often see after with a young big guy. He plays really, really hard. So that is going to be a challenge for Donnie Freeman and Sadiq White, whoever's out there on the floor trying to stop him. And you really got to stop him on the boards. But the other big guy, and I'm not going to get the last name pronunciation quite right, but the 7-foot transfer from Arizona, Henry Visser. He's a problem because he's got the height to go inside, and he's very skilled. He can score with both hands close to the basket, but he also likes to step outside. Now, I think Syracuse is very fortunate. They have a guy in William Kyle who has the athleticism to go out and guard out there. The problem for William Kyle tonight is guarding that 7-footer when he decides to go in and take up camp in the paint. That's going to be the tough part. And he's got to do it, and he's got to stay out of foul trouble because Syracuse doesn't really have a lot of options when they go beyond him. Obviously, Akir Soiree, 2 out of the last 3 games, I think he hasn't played a minute. Didn't play a minute against Notre Dame. Donnie Freeman at the 5 guarding WSYR is going to be a problem. So William Kyle, first and foremost, has to stay out of foul trouble.
Another difficulty that North Carolina puts on the big men is everything's they fast break on makes,
Yes,
and you gotta get back, and there's no celebrating your baskets or anything. These guys got to get back against this team.
Absolutely right, and this goes all the way back to the Dean Smith days and Roy Williams too. Carolina runs, and their big men run, and if the big men, especially with the 7-footer. When Carolina runs, the big guys trail. And a lot, if they have a guy, and they've had a lot in their history at North Carolina, the big guy who can trail that fast break and hit that 3-pointer or the shot is the secondary break guy. So bigs, you have to avoid hustling all the way back down court and running straight to the paint and then looking up and seeing your man stopping and catching the ball at the top of the key and dropping in an open 3-pointer.
Mike, I happened to be listening to the pregame show, the Learfield pregame show the other day on the way to the Dome, and Coach Salin brought up Calvin Russell. And he said, listen, I know that he's got a ways to go, but he said at practice, this kid's got a great motor. He's super athletic. He can get after you defensively. And again, he wasn't in any way, shape, or form talking about him getting a lot of minutes, but he said with Red saying everything's on the table, is it possible that at some point we could see Calvin Russell come in as like a defensive stopper, an energy guy for a little bit of a spark? What do you think about that?
That's funny that Coach Sadlin said that, because before the game the other day, he said the same thing to me, that he liked Calvin Russell's motor and thought if they needed it, he could provide some sort of spark. He was a dive on the floor after the loose ball type of guy. Now, he also said there's not much offense there, and he's just as liable to turn the ball over as he is to get you a steal. But if you're just looking for a guy to come in and give you some juice and maybe get the guys on the bench up and involved and just for something that maybe, but they might have found another way to get there without turning to a football player, with Sadiq White in the starting lineup and going with him a little bit more. And maybe that just kind of sends a message up and down the lineup, and they don't have to do it. But it was interesting to hear Coach Sadlin say that. And I tell you what, I respect Coach Sadlin very, very much. And if he says it, well, I'm at least going to consider it.
Yeah, no, same, because I think the world of Coach Sadlin, and I think when we saw him play the mop up time, I think everybody's like, he was getting after it. He was, he showed some in some flashes, as Greg Robinson would say, in a very short period of time. And when Coach Sadlin brought it up, I was like, that's interesting.
He also had a very awkward turnover.
Yeah, right. It does seem like that would be like a desperate move potentially, but look at where they are right now. Yeah. So I wouldn't rule it out.
I think it's also a little safer. And it might be a little safer to do that in a home game, and maybe not against one of the top 25 teams in the country if you don't have to. Sometimes you do that, and you also get the crowd involved if it's a home game. And maybe you also turn him loose out there when you want to go full court pressure. Let him go. I mean, he's a 6'5" guy. We don't know too many of the basketball players' times in the 40, but we know Calvin Russell's.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point.
Mike, I want to hit you on one big picture thing here, too, of this team. This team is talented enough to win these next 2 games. It wouldn't be a great shock if they somehow could do it. If that happens, where does that put Syracuse as a program, looking forward? Is that on the bubble to the bubble, or are you still way out of the picture?
I think you're still looking pretty far down the road at the bubble, even with these 2 wins. Now, what it does do is like, well, maybe they're not completely out of it yet. We get, I think you get to that point, and there's still a whole lot of work left to do. I read something today, somebody was like, kind of doing a little bit of the math of bracketology, and I apologize. I don't know where I read it. I've been, all over the place today reading different stuff. if they won out except for Louisville and Duke, theoretically they would be like first 4 out. Yikes, right? It's like, wow.
Yeah.
So, but you're close. And if you can get anywhere near the point of just being in that first 4 out conversation, well, you know what? Then you're going to Charlotte for the ACC tournament with a chance. And a better chance, by the way, than you've had in any of the last 3 or 4 years.
It's like being down 25 in the first half, and you say, all right, we got to cut it to 10 by halftime, or, cut it to 10 with 12 minutes to go or whatever, and then, give yourself a fighter's chance at the very least.
They would.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they would have then again a shot, but you're asking a lot to go on the road to
I wouldn't bet
places.
on it.
Yeah. And with that being said, as we wrap things up, Mike, what kind of percent chance do you give them to not even to necessarily win tonight, but what percent chance is this a close game with 5 minutes to go? Like in striking distance?
I mean, I guess there's a chance. I'd say there's the same chance Syracuse has at winning is almost the same chance that it'll just be close, because at home, Carolina's just running through people. They score a ton at home. They don't lose at home. They haven't lost at home this season. They score. I don't know what the average margin of victory is in their games, but it's big.
I have that right here.
Right,
it is what did I say? 22.3.
Yeah. And granted, some of that is built up on some of their non-conference teams that they whipped up on, right? So we understand that that's
Correct.
the case.
Right.
But that's also the nature of Carolina teams going back to the days when I was an undergrad. If they get you down and if they get rolling, they're hard to stop. And, I've seen a lot of Carolina games, go from 5 points to 20 in a heartbeat. And it's amazing how it'll happen. And, we've seen it in the past few years when Syracuse has taken pretty decent teams down there. And they'll play with them. And, I've also seen Syracuse get blown off the floor right from the opening tap down in Chapel Hill. But I would say between a 15 and 20% chance of keeping this game close and ergo having a shot to win.
Yeah.
Again, this is not a great Carolina team. I like the two bigs. I'm not in love with their perimeter guys. I know one of them, the Luka Bogovic kid, is on a little bit of a roll lately as something that Carolina really, really needed. But the other guys are they're okay. I mean, in terms of Carolina standards, so if those guys don't have a great game, you might have enough. I mean, you're gonna need guys like JJ, Nate Kings, Donnie Freeman to score for you tonight.
So it's not going to be easy, Paulie. But again, if Syracuse plays its A game, there is a chance, and they need there to be a chance because there is no margin for error anymore.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Well, there is.
Yes.
And you said if they win against UNC and Virginia, do they get to the bubble of the bubble? I know what you mean. I think they make it interesting, right? They at least give themselves a path to get to the the NCAA tournament. It's not likely, obviously, that they're going to have to win a bunch of games in the month of February.
They've taken
all they can do is win the next one.
Yeah, they've taken the margin for the hardest route to get to the tournament is all they've got in front of them.
Yeah, all they can do is win the next one, and so they got to win this one tonight, and then it's on to Virginia, and you got to win that one as well. All right, we got to go. Enjoy the game tonight, everybody. We'll talk about it tomorrow. For Paulie, I'm Steve. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.